At a time of great crisis, in the boardrooms of Hollywood, the legends foretell the development executives will return to Reboot It!
Gotta catch 'em all! My name is Producer Bill. This is Reboot It. You are back with us for the only show you need in the golden age of IP entertainment, where all your favorite franchises will get reboots, even if they are the highest grossing franchise ever made. With me, as always, the Reboot Crew. We have producer extraordinaire and the co-host of the upcoming Doug Defends, Billy Business.
Ooh, I'm actually excited for this one. This one is a huge bite we're chewing off. Let's do it.
The biggest bite we could take. Co-host of the greatest pod and all-around comedian extraordinaire, Ed Greer.
Dudes, I am happy to be here. I'm happy to be part of those freaking zombies you see in the park wandering around trying to catch shit in real life. These fucking weirdos. I'm really glad to participate in this culture and see what it's all about, man.
And the other co-host of the greatest pod and the one most likely to be wandering around playing Pokemon Go out of the four of us, Ron Swallow.
That's right. I did, in fact, play Pokemon Go. And I did Pokemon Go to the Pulse. So I just want you to...
That's how he got his weight down, was just all the walks he took looking for Pokemon, right? That's our weight check-in, Ron.
That's right.
Oh, dang.
Oh,
watch out.
The scales these days, Ron.
Hole 162.
Oh, that's lower than the last time we had a weight check-in. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, let's get right to it, guys. Today, we are rebooting, as I said, the most lucrative franchise in the history of entertainment. That is not a joke. Pokemon. Pocket Monsters. Even crazier, Pokemon is a franchise that is only 30 years old. The first piece of Pokemon media came out in 1996. If you owned a Game Boy back in the day, if you're old enough to have owned a Game Boy, you may remember the initial dawn of Pokemania. This franchise has spanned pretty much every type of media you can imagine, from video games to toys to a television show that is going on 26 seasons, I believe, 23 different feature films, even though not all of them have been released theatrically in the United States, and one of the most widespread and valuable card collecting games ever made, surpassing even Magic the Gathering. There is no way to really encapsulate the widespread mania around Pokemon. It first popped off, like I said, in the late 90s and popped off again, as we were talking about, with the introduction of Pokemon Go back in, wait for it, 2016. Almost 10 years ago. So if that feels like it was just yesterday to you, that's a check-in, baby. Guys, right off the bat, I want to go around the horn and just ask what each of our relationships is to Pokemon, because I, for one, have been aware of it since it debuted. I was a little bit out of their kind of 5-year-old to 12-year-old age range in 96, but my brother was not, and it was ubiquitous as I was growing up. So starting with Billy, what experience do you have with Pokemon?
Yeah, I was right there. I was 10. And I was obsessed with that first Game Boy game, the red and the blue. I think I had red, if I recall correctly, but just the idea at that time that there was a whole game and it was all the same, but your friend had the other version and there was one missing, and then you could get a cable that could hook your Game Boys up. That was all so cool. And then I wasn't a religious viewer, but Pokemon was on when I was getting ready for school, so I definitely watched it at least the first couple of years of that show. So my knowledge of Pokemon, I never got into the cards. I think the card, in my memory, it was Game Boy first, then the show, then the cards. And I kind of fell off around the cards time. But my wife was super into Pokemon Go when it came out in 2016. I think she got swept up in the mania too. So I just have always, even though Pokemon's never been like my favorite franchise, like I would call myself a very passive fan. I'm always just so amazed and so just genuinely blown away about how that franchise tends to always be groundbreaking and how many entry points it has. For some people, Pokemon is all about the card game, and that's how they got in. Some people, it's all about the show, all about the video games, all about this, all about that. But even when they do them, they are all just like AR games were not a huge thing till Pokemon did it. Even like the card games, like Magic the Gathering was for the nerdiest of nerds until Pokemon came along. And then it was like, it blew up. So, you know, I just think Pokemon, like, I have so much respect for it, even if I'm not the biggest fan.
Yeah, there are definitely a multitude of entry points. And I think one of the reasons why it's able to stay so open to new engagement is it has a deceptively simple story and formula, which we will get into. But first, Ed, take us through what is your relationship to the Pocket Monsters?
Look, man, I'm not gonna front. This is one of those things that I literally have no experience in. So I'm not going to like sabotage or be like, I don't like this. Just because I'm not into it doesn't mean I don't like it or can't contribute like basic story stuff. I do enjoy this whole like I'm carrying around monsters and other dudes are carrying around monsters and we're gonna fight our monsters versus each other and we're gonna have like Karate Kid type storylines about the monsters in our pockets. That's cool. I mean, that's on its face pretty cool. And so I think I'll be able to contribute, but as far as my fandom, I'm like Billy with the Turtles or something, like just this babe in the woods, you know.
Missed you completely. Unfortunate. Ron, what's your relationship to Pokemon?
Well, you said 96 was when it came out, I believe. And well, I was watching the Batman animated series and was an adult at that time. So you know, I missed most of that. I played Pokemon Go and learned a bunch while I was playing Pokemon Go. And you know, took a bunch of walks that I wouldn't have taken otherwise, probably. So yeah, not a huge. No, I wouldn't call myself a huge fan. I have a basic knowledge of it, but not like, you know, didn't get into it. On I didn't have the games and I didn't watch the show. I did catch a lot of Pokemon playing Pokemon Go, and I got the little spinny thing. I could do the spinny throw.
There you go. Well, you know, I like the fact that we are all coming into this, to Billy's point, from different entry points. We all have kind of a different breadth of knowledge. We have a different length of history. And I think what's interesting is so often when we do Reboot It, we are talking about franchises that oftentimes we grew up with or that really popped off big by the time we were already kind of on the cusp of being an entertainment. And this one, I feel like, falls in that weird gray area where, like, none of us were really in the business yet when it blew up. And yet most of us were kind of past the point where our brains were like just ready to absorb everything about it. So it'll just be interesting. Let's start with just a quick rundown of the story and the more of the mechanics of the game, I think, because whether it's in the video games, whether it's in the anime, and whether it's in the card collecting game, it's always the same structure to the point of repetition. But like I said, this franchise is meant for preteens. So that is more of a, call it a positive than a negative. So Pokemon centers around kids, almost always teenagers and below, who set off on what is essentially a sports ladder. You get your introductory Pokemon, your first Pokemon, which are these kind of mythological creatures that just exist out in the world of the story. And once you have one, you can train it to battle. These are very kind of sanguine battles. There's not a lot of, vicious blood and guts. Pokemon are almost never shown to die, certainly never to die in battle. But The whole idea is that in this sort of contest of champions way, you first make your way to the 8 Pokemon Master Gyms in your region. Once you collect a symbol, I think it's a patch that maybe goes on your shirt or something.
It's a badge.
A badge, there we go. Once you collect a badge from every one of the 8 gyms, you then get enough credits to face off against the Elite 4 of your region, who are sort of like the 4 top ranked Pokemon battlers. And if you defeat all 4 of them, you can then compete in the championship against the top Pokemon fighter in your region. Every single piece of Pokemon media is kind of constructed around that idea, save for maybe Detective Pikachu, which is sort of a weird outlier. Within that milieu, there's a lot of lore, but it tends to be a little bit elastic. Like, it's not necessarily this hard and fast, everything builds a new piece to the story puzzle. For example, one of my favorite bits of trivia about Pokemon, Mewtwo has become this legendary character pretty much on the strength of the fact that it was included in the original Pokemon Red and Blue as, I believe, a programming error. Like, it was not a playable character unless you found some way to jailbreak the software. And then because of that status, they started folding it into stories where Mewtwo is sort of this ultra rare character with like heightened abilities, to the point where we get to Detective Pikachu and Mewtwo has super intelligence, and there's a mad scientist who is trying to use a combination of technology and psychic powers to merge humans and Pokemons together, and Mewtwo is sort of the key to the entire premise. It's very strange stuff. The other couple things to mention, from the beginning of the anime, they have basically followed Ash Ketchum up until 2023. So from 1997, I believe, when the anime premiered, all the way to 2023, Ash Ketchum was your Pokemon trainer. He was a teenager who randomly was assigned to Pikachu when he got his first Pokemon, and then set out into the world to become the greatest Pokemaster of all time. Through the many, many seasons of that show, we followed Ash, primarily his 2 companions, Misty and, the name is flying out of my head, Brock. Thank you. Misty and Brock, as they've traveled the globe, getting into all kinds of adventures, and a lot of stuff that's made for kids. First loves, going to school, making new friends, losing friends, moving away, moving back. All this stuff kind of threads through the main focus of, hey, we're going to catch Pokemon, zap them into these Pokéballs that we can carry around in our pockets or our satchels, and take them to tournaments where they fight each other. So
something I always found interesting, by the way, I just want to say, add this in. There's almost no parents ever.
I mean, there are parents in the lore, but they play very ancillary roles in all these stories.
Yeah.
I think one of the funniest things is, like, Ash's mom is kind of just assumed to be carrying on some sort of affair with Professor Oak. I shouldn't say affair, because I believe Ash's dad is dead, but like, they've got a thing going on off screen. So Professor Oak's just kind of always hanging around with Ash's mom, but Ash's mom really has no bearing on any stories.
That went right over my head as a kid, because I'm like, oh yeah, maybe, now that I think about it. Didn't think about it back then.
Can't wait to get done with this and read that fanfic.
or write some.
I mean,
well, and
Rule 43 for Pokemon is all over the internet.
But also, when you look at both the games and the card game and the different interpretations of it and the long history of the actual animated show, there are multiple entry points. And us being obsessed with fucking with freaking Ash and Brock and blah blah blah. There's a billion tons of history of this stuff that goes back to like celestial beings making matter out of nothing and splitting off into tribes and infecting worlds and all this, not infecting, you know what I'm saying? Dropping onto different worlds and evolving in different ways. There's so much stuff, you know, even as a layman, I can see that there's so much stuff.
And that's sort of maybe the last piece of our broad overview before we just start throwing pitches out there. This is a really interesting and kind of non-Western world. There's a synthesis of like spirituality, sci-fi, and just some straight up, like, I don't know, monster tropes, almost like I almost want to say like archaic religious monster tropes that are very much grow from Japanese spiritual culture, where they're kind of okay for their stories to go anywhere. Like if you want to tell stories about ancient warring gods breathing the universe into existence from their tears or whatever, totally cool in Pokemon. If you want to tell stories about artificial intelligence and cloning and genetic engineering, totally cool in Pokemon. If you want to tell stories about like the long lineages of these sort of monster animals and how they evolved from one form to another and interbred and all that, totally fine in Pokemon. And to the point where Pokemon has even gotten into the ethics of battling monsters. One of my favorite storylines, which maybe this is a good jumping off point for pitches, is Team Plasma, which is one of the rival teams, the most famous being Team Rocket with Jesse James and Meowth from the anime. But in the games, Team Plasma was a team of Pokemon trainers who were essentially trying to shut down the Pokemon tournaments because they claimed that keeping Pokemon in Pokéballs and forcing them to fight each other was a form of slavery. And in the end, they kind of shirked that story because it turned out that Team Plasma was just trying to manipulate the public so they could be the only ones to own Pokemon in the end. But it's a really interesting point, and one that, you know, nothing in this very made for kids universe has ever truly addressed. So I don't know if we want to start there, but just an interesting thing to discuss. Pokeballs, too, are a piece of the mythology that has never really been fleshed out. Some people think that the Pokemon are literally like shoved into the balls. Some people think it's some sort of dimensional transfer. Some people think it like shrinks you down and puts you in stasis and allows you to live in a virtual reality world. And like I said, because this property allows you to go into pretty much any genre, it's up for debate. So maybe that's a good reason to make a movie. I don't know. But does anybody have any thoughts out the gate?
I mean, I have oh, go ahead. Well, I was just gonna say, like, I feel like this group would naturally gravitate towards the let's deconstruct and pick apart the, you know, the ethics and blah blah blah. But for this one, I don't know why. I just feel like that's not the movie that people would want to see for Pokemon. I think we all have some sort of headcanon / sense of disbelief that we just all somehow agree, if you watch Pokemon and you enjoy it, that like, well, they want to be there and they like it and nothing nefarious is happening. Let's have an adventure. So I don't know. While I understand Team Plasma, I also, like, from a business standpoint, like, yeah, I don't, if I owned Pokemon, I don't know if I'd want to just throw out the ethics of why this franchise is potentially problematic on the table right away, you know?
No. Well, I'm pitching the story of the Abraham Lincoln of the Pokemon. He comes through.
I mean,
dude, or the Cyrus. I always go back to Cyrus of the Pokemon. Like, can you dig it, Bulbasaur, and all the rest of y'all motherfuckers? We have to get together, and anyway. I also think that trying to, and this is just me trying to invest these Poke dudes with some agency. It's a genie concept. They're in a ball. You get them out, and you get to like dictate to a certain degree what they do, but they do want to fight. I think there's something interesting about them being like these kind of creatures who are like, for some reason, they have this tendency towards trying to dominate each other or trying to establish some sort of hierarchy. And you, as the human, are low key the jockey of that shit. This concept that you're just in total control of it and you're throwing them at people and all this kind of jazz, that's the slavery. But these things want to fight. Most animals, you sit them down in front of each other, they don't just instantly fight. Pokemon are like, let's go. Somebody threw me at you in a ball. Let's fight now. They want to fight.
They're like
they're like boxers, though, because they don't just start wild going. It's like
Mhm.
you take your best shot, and it's like, all right, come on. It's like the slap fight thing, you know,
Mhm.
where they just sit there and take the best shot, and then they give a best shot. So yeah, it is
Yeah.
almost like very disciplined on their end, which is kind of
Right.
interesting.
And
I mean, I had a
there's
weird
yeah.
idea. Can I just throw you the weird idea? Maybe it'll be part of the thing because you talked about what the balls might be like, and there's an argument that they might be in a pocket dimension. And like, look, we have to have people obviously in this. We have to have some kind of like person trying to become the greatest, you know, maybe even defeating Ash or something like that. I don't know if that's where we want to go, but I also think it would be totally entertaining to have a world where the Poke people, the different Pokemon are in their own apartments, super plush, cool apartments, and they just have like a society where they get out of their apartment and like go shopping for whatever stuff they like, and maybe there's like a specific store that sells food for, you know, a Bulbasaur or whatever. It's very silly, I know, but it just popped into my head when you were talking about what it might be like in the Pokeball. And there's a bunch of different arguments about what the Pokeball might be like. And the other thing is, if we sell a world where the Pokemon are like pretty happy, like being in the Pokeball, and at the same time also really enjoy like challenging another monster after they get out of the Pokeball, none of them are unhappy. They're like, have a nice home life and then have a nice work life balance too.
Pokemon just living the American dream, working that 9 to 5, you know, going home to their 2-car garage. Fantastic.
Clocking in when they fight, you know.
They call me the working man. Yeah.
Look, I don't hate the idea though of like Zootopia for Pokemon, at least as a part of the movie. There's something interesting to that.
One thing I do want to say, and I brought it up when I was talking about like experience of Pokemon, and I don't have an idea, but I just want to throw it out there. Like, I think what makes Pokemon stand out from everything is that, like, look at what they were doing at the time. At the time, having a Pokemon video game, but there's 2 versions, and you can't get them all unless you hook up with another person that has it. That was unheard of. In 2016, I'm not saying they invented AR, but did you see anyone wandering around looking for AR Pokemon before or anything? No, never. Yeah. So I'm almost
and Harry Potter died.
I'm just saying
the video,
yeah,
AR
right.
Yeah.
I just think whatever we do, and this is kind of why to me Detective Pikachu maybe was a little bit of a letdown in a way. It's like, I feel like just a movie or just a show is not enough. Like, we have to make something that's like groundbreaking in its own way. And I'm not trying to like turn this into the Matrix where it's like we have to reinvent the most philosophical question of all time. I'm just saying it's like there has to be, you know, something outside of the box. It's got to be like, I don't know, part of me when you were talking, Ron, about the what's it like in a Pokeball, I was just like, what if this was the first thing that really set off entertainment, not just games, but entertainment in a VR headset? And it's like, fuck it, we're going to take you in a Pokeball, and we have scripted adventures, but there's also an element of like the Clue movie where it's like it could go this way, or some people get this version. You know what I mean?
If you want to get really literal, we could make this an immersive experience for the Sphere in Las Vegas, and you turn the Sphere into a Pokeball.
Dude, that is so freaking cool. That I mean, like, that's where my brain is at. It's like, whatever we do, like, what if it's a movie that played in the Sphere for like a residency? Yeah, for like 6 months or something. And so you had to go see it there. It was an event. I just think like a regular movie with a regular story is just not enough for Pokemon.
I think we need to stop recording this and go do that.
I mean, where my mind immediately goes as we're talking about that. Have you seen some of the videos of like the immersive theater? And specifically, I saw a video and maybe we'll find it and overlay it as I'm talking here, but like there's a guy who's having a motorcycle chase on stage as part of a play or a stage show. And what they do is they bring out a motorcycle on a gimbal that the guy can perform on, and then he's surrounded by an LED screen that fills the proscenium that essentially whizzes the entire cityscape by and allows like a cop car to be chasing him, so that when you see it from the audience, it just looks like, oh, the guy I was watching perform on stage got on a motorcycle and started a high-speed chase through a city. That's the sort of stuff that we should be doing if we're talking about this. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Well, and also, what is it like when they throw the ball and it pops open? What if somebody's like in the middle of eating some ramen?
What?
You know what I mean? And he gets
I don't
sucked
know what
up.
you mean.
And
I'm
he's, like,
quite
so
sure.
sad.
I'm quite sure that's happened over the course of
Like a
26
Bulbasaur is
seasons.
trying to spoon in some ramen,
I see,
and then
I
he
see.
gets sucked into it, and he's shot through like a fucking dimensional tube to pop out of the ball.
Well,
I mean, you're
yes.
talking about being in that.
No,
thing.
I'm saying,
You see what I'm saying?
and again,
Yeah.
I'll overlay this too, but it's like, I think I sent it to at least you, Ed. They had The Matrix playing at Cosm LA, and I saw it's just the most immersive thing. And that's kind of where I think like my head starts, is if it's not the Sphere or Cosm or something like that, it's like, how do we make this narrative, but also have an element of that Pokemon Go, or have an element of that, like if you come to the 4:00 show, it's this Pokemon, but if you come to the 9:00 show, everything's the same, but these Pokemon get changed. It's like, how do we honor this legacy of them being disruptors in this Pokemon story, you know?
Okay, just a yes and that. I think what we need to do is design a movie that is worth showing in that way, and also has parts, big parts like the IMAX parts of Sinners or whatever, where people can come out and literally participate and like throw the balls and do the shit, and have the Pokemon come down and be really big and like play with the scale of like a human being in front of the big screen as all the stuff is happening Rocky Horror style, and all these people get to like participate in it. That stuff, I'm digging that. I actually dig that.
I actually think we should talk about this as a play with incredible filmed elements. So like, and here's what I'm thinking, as just as you were talking, Billy, the idea that like, all right, you have to be in Las Vegas to see this thing, right? You trick out Vegas as like the most intense version of Pokemon Go. And when the audience shows up, you actually have real battles between people who have Pokemon Go, who have collected either that day or that weekend or whatever. And it plays out like there is a way to do like a live real-time thing in the surround screen using essentially like real-time motion capture. Like if you have performers in motion capture suits, or you have a bunch of pre-programmed stuff like with the characters and some sort of AI, you can do that sort of real-time thing where people can actually show up and like have a Poke battle.
They would do it at Disneyland with I don't know if it's still there, but with the turtle talk from Finding Nemo, where the turtle was like, it was animated on the fly and talking to the kids.
Yeah.
But I almost think like in a way you're kind of thinking of this as like pro wrestling, where it's like somehow these have to be scripted in a way that can still fit within some sort of narrative drama, but there is kind of like an element where you as an audience member, like, what could we do that would make people like, I have to get to Vegas and I have to see this Pokemon show and be a part of it, you know?
But see that's kind of what I'm saying about, like, I agree with this, like, big sort of it's a movie and it's a play and it's everything. I'm agreeing with all of that. But like, the thing that's going to get people out to come is there's going to be narrative sections where they go, I wish this had to happen. I wish he had whipped out a Mewtwo on the ass. I wish this, I wish that. And they can show up and do it themselves in that performance of the thing that stuff you're talking about happens. You can jack it, whatever, the lottery or whatever, and it's like, hey, this guy and that guy, let's battle it out and see what's supposed to really happen. Well, I pick such and such sword for this, and he picked such and such, totally different characters than we picked. But it's a narrative point where they want to play that out. You dig what I'm saying?
Okay, so
Kind of, yeah.
so then what is the story we're going to end up telling? I mean, the obvious easy thing is like people show up and they fight each other, or do people show up and it is a community event where everybody who shows up is versus whoever the antagonist is? I mean,
I think this is where, like, honestly, this is where we get to create something that there is no blueprint for, right? Like, I think you're showing up, and it's almost like the closest thing my mind is coming to is like that. Remember that old T2 3D Battle Across Time, where you had 3 or 4 different kind of forms of narrative. But it does need to tell a story, or else it's just a game, or else it is just a tournament.
That's all I'm saying. Like they have some sort of structure, and it has again, it has intrinsic Karate Kid in it, Doctor Strange in it, all type of Genie Tales in it. These, I also believe this though. I just got to get this out before we get too far into it. I think part of the narrative of this could borrow from some of the so-called more mature animes, in that as they battle in these tournaments, there has to be a larger, I don't want to say war, this is Pokemon, but there has to be a larger conflict that where if you become the Ventress champion of XYZ Galaxy Sector, your responsibility is X in some Poke thing. And these guys who are doing this Poke Jazz, they're the Cobra Kai of Pokemon, for lack of a better word. Not the guys, but like, somebody you'd want to compete against.
I will say I had a question about, like, let's say that Ash becomes, and not that we're doing an Ash story, but if Ash were to become the greatest Pokemon master of all time, he's now the Michael Jordan of fighting Pokemon. Like, what does that actually mean? I think that's kind of the same thing you were just saying, Ed. Like, what does it mean to become the greatest Pokemaster of all time?
I mean,
is it just
my
that people
opinion,
love you?
Yeah, totally. No, it's that the understanding of which Pokemon is gonna defeat other Pokemon, in my opinion.
No, but like, what's the stakes?
But it's like, to what end? To what end?
What are the stakes of it?
I don't know. I think maybe you answered your own question. It's like, ask Michael Jordan, like, what do you get when you're the best basketball player of all time? To what end? It's like, I don't know,
a lot of money,
billions of dollars.
Yeah, but see, also, and not to make it too mature, but like, if you are the best at getting super creatures to fight good, then you should be, valuable to somebody. I'm not saying somebody's going to kidnap Michael Jordan and make him play basketball for the fate of the universe. But
Space Jam, anybody?
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do think we'd have to keep in mind that, like, the tagline of the whole franchise is "Gotta catch 'em all." So it's almost a little bit beside the point to split hairs about, like, well, what does it mean to be the best? It's like, no, being the best is just the goal.
I want to be the very best, like no one ever was.
Right?
It's very simple.
Sort of like shamelessly capitalistic, but
that's what makes Pokemon is a pop song, right? It's like, you're not trying to do Beethoven's Ninth. It's like you already know the melody because it's 3 chords and the words are baby, 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 baby. That's why it's succeeded for 30 plus years.
So that's my favorite song.
Let me throw a little bit more lore into this because it might spark something. So one thing to keep in mind is they do find a way to make it movie worthy every time they make a movie. And what I mean by that is that they build some big reveal or some big piece of lore building into the movies, at least the most successful ones. Like I said, the original movie was all about folding Mew and Mewtwo into the canon and explaining, like, what their story is. Detective Pikachu introduced this entire new idea. Can you merge Pokemon and humans on like a psionic level, so that it's not just you are training Pokemon to fight, but you become your Pokemon? It's like a whole different angle on the game. So to me, that that is the secret sauce to making it movie worthy. Is it's like you're literally adding something into the lore. You're bringing a big idea into this simple game mechanic that makes people go, "Oh man!"
I mean, could it be
yeah.
as simple as like, I don't know, like, was it one of the Hunger Games where it's like everyone that was in it was a former winner? Like, is it just like the
quarter
tournament
quell.
of all tournaments, and we make it so that the sphere is literally like you are arriving to that tournament? You're kind of, immersing yourself. So like that's where the journey begins. Is there?
Eight
I don't know.
people.
I'm just trying to
Eight
think
people
of like,
go in. One person leaves.
or it's like shit, do time travel. Every greatest Poke master for the past 10,000 years is able to, their spirits are resurrected for a fight.
It was like, okay, so Pokemon Mortal Kombat. Not
Yes.
derisively.
There is a piece of the lore where I think it's Arceus, who is like the god of the Pokemon world, appears at like the end of some of the early games. Essentially, like throughout time, Arceus will appear and essentially just tell winners to go and catch more Pokemon and train more Pokemon. Like the god of Pokemon has a design where humans are supposed to be fighting Pokemon. It's very strange.
Hey, I noticed that you think you won stuff. You didn't. Go get some more Pokemon, bitch.
Right.
Dude,
And see,
that is the god of marketing.
Right.
There's always more to catch.
Right. And see, and that's what I kind of I personally don't enjoy the apex of Pokemon. I'm trying to be the best. I am not the best, very obviously, but I think also if we just added an extra layer of, again, we're trying to get at it. What happens when you're the best, even in your district? What's the point? There has to be something that you have to do if you get that position that is important, and you're fighting other people who think it's important.
What
Is this
about like
Man style?
Well, I was
Where,
going
like-
to say, what if we're not I'm not saying aping this, but maybe think about it in this way. What if we look to our Western comic brethren, and it's like, could we do our version of like Secret Wars, where they are whisked off into some other dimension, and we're now past this NCAA tournament for the best, and now like being the best is a life or death kind of consequence, or if you're not the best, your universe doesn't live type of thing,
Man, I'm always down for that shit, man.
I got two pitches that are kind of along those lines. Maybe they spark, maybe they don't. Number one, if the idea is that you're going into a Pokeball because you're going into the sphere, what if one of the hooks of the story is like, this is for the first time we are going to reveal the mechanics of going into the Pokesphere. So like into the Pokeball. So like to Ron's point, maybe this all does take place in a Zootopia like world, and our characters are like the first humans, perhaps on accident, to get sucked into the Poke world. Pitch number two.
I shrunk the Pokeball.
A little bit. But
Yeah,
pitch number two then, another thing that feels like it would be movie worthy is the idea that like we're introducing a bunch of new Pokemon, and they're coming from a place you've never seen. So like traditionally Pokemon are I think either 12 or 16 different types. There's like on the most basic level, it's like water, fire, electric, but it goes a bunch of different ways. What if we're introducing the 13th and they're coming from a realm that can only be accessed from the dimension, the pocket dimension inside the Pokeballs? And it's almost like a how to Train Your Dragon 2 situation, where it's like there's a warlord with vicious Pokemon who are invading the dimension of the Pokeballs and are going to like steal all Pokemon from all Poke trainers. So that's like Shao Kahn's forces in Mortal Kombat are showing up, and they're trying to turn the Pokeball world into Outworld, for lack of a better word.
And that is actual enslavement. These dudes are fighting in tournaments and doing their own thing, and then they get shackled up to go with these dudes. That's awful. That's real enslavement.
Maybe this Pokeball is kind of like the Phantom Zone. Like it's
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
Pokeball that was never meant to be open. I remember there was some story in the cartoons where there was like a Pokeball that no one could open, and that was like a whole arc or something. But I like the
Yeah.
idea of this Pokeball that has been. What if someone like hit it and it's like almost like a Russian nesting doll, and it's like a hidden Pokeball within a Pokeball, and it's been like you cannot, no one should open this thing, and it is like that's what we're opening.
And see, and I also like the character or one of the characters being almost in a Rain of Fire sense, feeling responsible for letting this Ark of the Covenant open and these evil things into our dimension and our Poke guys enslaved and all that stuff.
But it's like, what if the Pokemon inside the ball finds it, doesn't know what it is, but then they get thrown and oops, out comes them and this ball, and it becomes like our MacGuffin that unleashes. I like all that, you know.
And then so how do we beat those guys? Do we got to catch those guys now? Like, do we have to, like, do the people who come inside the dome have to catch the now rogue Pokemon?
I don't know, but you know, it'd be really awesome. Sorry, I'm thinking way ahead. This isn't even
No, go
story,
ahead.
but it's like, imagine you take at the end somehow you defeat the bad guy, but all these 100, 200 new Pokemon that no one's ever seen before. We're in the sphere, right? Are crawling up the walls, running as fast as you can. You have to pull out your phone, Pokemon Go style, and see how many of these that you can get.
Yep.
And then you have people outside after it's over for days, weeks, months, trying to see if anyone can catch all of these new ones. You know,
I love that. I love that, dude, because I can even see it as like honestly part of the huge ending of the movie.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that is the I mean, reiterate to all, but yeah, the huge ending of the movie is that, and at the end they do close the portal, but these ones get through, and they're
it's all the dinosaurs getting loose in that Jurassic World, right? Except this time you're just trying to get one or two as they scurry off on the walls. But you know, I think that's so cool. You know.
Oh, and what about a game mechanic?
Wait, hold on. We're getting a phone call. I'm just gonna hang up. No, I'm gonna hang up.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hang up. We'll deal with this later because this is going too good. So goodbye. All right. Sorry. Go ahead, Ed.
Dude, I was just saying, what about a game mechanic where these new Pokemon can do something to combine with present Pokemon or take over present Pokemon as like a battle mechanic for the game or in the card game and different stuff? These new ones, you slap those down on top of your Mewtwo and it becomes a super mutant thing because they have this ability because they're from that other world and they have a new genus to combine. You know what I mean?
Yeah. They're like symbiote Pokemons. You know?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, or like cuckoos, you know what I'm saying? They come into your nest and kick your ass out, you know?
I mean, so just to reset us a little bit, I really love the idea of the Matryoshka Pokeballs. I really love the idea that like so the way I'm seeing this, and stop me if you feel differently, but you come in, you sit down, the story starts, you have live actors who are the first humans to ever enter a Pokeball. And it's because something horrible is happening. You know, something's going on. We have to investigate because Pokemon are like going missing. They're not in their balls. Like we try to throw them and they're not there. So now through this, you know, experimental procedure, Professor whoever, we could invent a new character, has sent us in to see what's going on. And we can have some adventures where it's interactive between, you know, the actors and the screen, and we're in the world. And I like the idea then that they find a Pokeball, they open that Pokeball, and maybe that even like leads them into another dimension. And you get a little bit of like Doctor Strange dimension hopping just to make use of the fully immersive 360 until you finally get to the bottom of the well of Pokeballs. So now you're in a Pokeball, in a Pokeball, in a Pokeball. And that's where when you open it, you know, the warlord Poke trainer, whatever, is either there or not. I don't know quite how that. Maybe there's a way to make the story come back around to like without even having to go back into the real world. We discover from inside that like whatever was supposed to be in there was trapped, or now it's like a chase through the different the levels of the Poke world to prevent those creatures from getting to the human world or the real world. You know what I mean? The idea being that we eventually get back to the first level of the Pokeball so that we have our final showdown where the evil is defeated, but most of these never before seen Pokemon are escaping. To Billy's point, if you get out your phones and start snapping pictures, you can maybe catch them, and they're not going to be available anywhere else if you're doing a Pokemon Go style thing. And to Ed's point, maybe they're then transferable where like you can apply them to any number of other Pokemon to like enhance their stats or whatever. You know, they're to the cuckoo point. Is that essentially where we're at? I
think that's it's almost like the mechanics are incredible. It's like if we can pad the story out and really make that story mean something, you know,
Okay,
or not mean something, but you know, like really dig deeper.
Work.
I'm like, yeah, exactly. Then holy shit, like this could be like once in a generation experience, you know?
It might be interesting to use I mean, there's some worlds where Ash and Misty get together, I believe. Is it Misty? I want to say Ash and Misty get together, and what if they had a kid and the kid ends up being the new greatest professor who discovers this whole thing. And so he's the one recruiting everybody into the dome and mistakenly, you know, lets them out and has to now be like, okay, we have an emergency. We need you guys to, you know, catch these Pokemon through this thing.
Yes, or what if we just use Ash? Because Ash was kind of informally retired, like I said, in 2023, where he essentially just walked off into the sunset with the idea being, well, no, he's just going to train and catch more Pokemon.
Yeah.
Like,
but he had already won everything too.
Right. So like, what if this is the return of Ash? And it could be an older Ash, but it's like, that's sort of a great, you know, late second act reveal for the audience. Like, it's almost like you're trying to track down the figure who first let free the, you know, these dark Pokemon. And it turns out that Ash is trapped in the Pokeball from some other event. You know what I mean? And you could then have like a flashback of how he got there that encircles you in the sphere. That could be kind of cool.
Okay. Yeah,
I like that. I like that. Or like even like the not to be so plain with the mentor jazz, but I also think if we were to do mentor jazz, I'm saying my pitch for mentor jazz would be more like, I am old. I watched this movie called Color of Money. It was about Paul Newman, who used to be a big deal pool player in the 60s. Now it's the 80s and he sells liquor, but he sees this young kid with a thunderbolt strike. This guy is just the best at busting those balls out. And he knows if he just comes and tells these kids how to do it, how to be a professional pool player, this kid's going to be the best of all time. And over the course of the story, he tries to infect this kid with his morals and his way of doing it, his old way of doing it. And in the end, the kid even surpasses him with learning the skills. And I just think that'd be an interesting thing to do with like Ash. Like, he's not necessarily an antagonist, but he could be maybe on the other side of this big poke thing, or, you know, he's inside, you know, the adventure of the poke thing. Maybe not. I
actually I'm in favor of, I don't know where we are in the timeline anymore of Pokemon, to be honest with you, but I'm in favor of like, fuck, let's jump ahead and have him be, you know, kind of old man Ash, and like, let's usher in a new generation. They're already doing it in the cartoons, but it's like,
yeah,
let's take it one step further. Let's do a whole new, you know, old man Ash passing that baton. We have new Pokemon, new human characters. It's kind of it is a reboot. It's a new
and a new situation. This guy's got so much experience in the old way of poking, but now we're in giant tournaments for the fate of the universe. And I throw my ball and my perfectly created super Pikachu or whatever doesn't come out because it's gone. My perfect creature is gone because it got sucked into this jazz. And like the fallout of that, like these big tournaments that really mean something. Like, I mean, you know, they used to play football for the right to do X. I'm not trying to put too much reality into this, but like, again, why does it freaking matter? if you
But
win
I
a
also think
Poke
like
thing.
whatever these Pokemon that are coming out, they need to be something that Ash at some point realizes like I'm not equipped to, like, these are not the Pokemons that I train. I was the best at what Pokemon is, but someone who's even better than me is going to have to figure out how to navigate this new world. Like,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, whatever these, I like the symbiote thing, but it's like almost like what's a step beyond symbiote? What is something
Yeah,
that
for
makes
sure.
these Pokemon being out in the wild even like more of like you cannot go by? It's not just like once this is over, it's like, oh, I caught 50 of the new ones. Let's go to a tournament. It's like, no. The catching these things is fucking imperative. Like the status quo is not okay until we figure out where all these things are, you know?
Yeah, I think the untrainable dragon aspect of it is really cool, Billy.
Yeah. I also, God bless it. He's calling again. All right. I'm gonna.
Because you hung up on him, man.
I just hung up on him again. We'll see how this goes. But
Wow.
I want us to kind of get a full pitch in before we need to listen. Maybe we pick up when we have a full pitch and don't even let him give his feedback. That's what I'm thinking.
Wow.
I'm gonna tell him this was your idea, but
I know, man.
I'm behind you. I'm behind you.
Bill's like, hey, we should all storm the gates.
I might not be here next episode, but then fair enough. We'll see what happens.
Okay, so Old Man Ash and yeah, maybe it is like we called in this team somehow, and it's like I get what you're saying, like Ash was stuck in there, but I almost wonder if for the story, if it works better to give Ash a real ending, which is like he comes in because he's the best. They call him because he's the best because he's won everything, but then he realizes like, but my time is up. You know, whoever these other characters are that we bring in, like they need to pick up. They need to pick up the ball and run now.
Okay, so I mean,
I
what
guess
if
you
it's-
could do it the other way too, where it's like Ash is stuck in there, and then he's like, "This is beyond me." But I think that ultimately, like, this works great to give him some finality, some ending.
Well,
you know?
by doing this, we set up for future Pokemon cartoons. Like you could now we've got a whole crew.
Everything.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's a great idea to have him passing the torch and just being like, okay, we need new blood out there. I've been the
And
best,
I think
but
once we rescue Pikachu, that
I mean,
Pikachu now goes
that
on with these new kids. You know?
I think
Yep.
Ed's basically said that like it has to be the search for Pikachu. Like that's what this is, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm hearing maybe there's one of three things to do with Ash. Either he appears, he's part of the live show, and like halfway through or something, he gets injured or he fails or he leaves, leaving like our kids stranded, having to figure out what to do. Or Ash is out in the quote unquote human world, and maybe he's like a disembodied voice that we're hearing, or we see him as like a big face on the screen, like beaming in, like Superman with the Bottle City of Kandor, or he's some sort of antagonist role where he's lost in the Pokeball going after Pikachu, and we encounter him on the way, but he's been changed. Is there one of those three ways we're leaning toward?
I personally, just to really get it kickstarted, I think I might like an Ash that has gone the farthest you can go to messing with these things, and it's messed with him a little bit. Like he's trying to get Pikachu back, and he's on some weird white whale quest that's kind of messed up his mind or whatever. You know what I mean? But he's still the best and all that jazz. He's not crazy. This is Pokemon. But like the new character, him coming to the grips that he's too close to it. He's tried this whole thing and he's gotten as close as he could, but maybe he's not the guy. And him having to like we're saying, pass it to this young kid.
I just don't want to Luke Skywalker him like that.
I get that.
Personally, I love The Last Jedi, and I love all that jazz in The Last Jedi, but Lord knows
not for
fans
Ash.
do not like it when you do that.
Well,
No,
okay. What about a thing of he has a crisis of confidence somewhere in the movie, and at the end when he gets like Pikachu back, or right before he even gets Pikachu back, he just goes, you know what, F it, I am the best, and I'm gonna do the thing that Luke Skywalker never got to do: pull down the walkers, do the stuff. He's whipping out Bulbasaurs and Mewtwo's and whatever the hell else he's, I know 3 Pokemon, sorry, but like he's pulling out these ones and he's stacking them in this super fresh way, and he's realizing that he does know a little bit about how to mess with these guys. And one thing, I guess I'm going to get it out right here. I think the game mechanic for these so-called parasite dudes, it isn't that. This is Pokemon. It's evolution. But when they like jump on you and evolve you, you turn into XYZ. But in the game mechanic, you can like defeat that or something and evolve the way that you want to do, or something, something like that, where it's like the power is yours or something, or there's a weird mutation or something aspect to it. It's evolution though, like a weird evolution. These things they'll weirdly evolve you.
I mean, I like the idea that these things are like, if they're subspecies, because they've got the categories of Pokemon. If their subspecies is evolvers, right? These are the evolver Pokemons. Like I don't think they of themselves need to be good or bad. You know what I mean? Like
right.
The whole idea,
right. They present as bad because they're weird. They present as bad because they're weird.
Well, and I think there needs to be a central villain that is sort of making them bad or using them in evil ways.
What if they were people and this guy experimented on them and just tried to rapidly evolve them so many times? Kind of like what happened with the elves into orcs, where it's like these used to be, and they're now just so evolved that they're almost, or it's like an AI system, that is somehow he's evolved them so much,
That's an interesting. So what if in the Pokeball pocket dimension, Pokemon can't evolve? They have to be in the human world, but humans can. So that's the inherent danger of a human going into the Poke dimension, is like now they're susceptible to these weird spontaneous evolutions. And this villain realized that. And so brought a bunch of people into the Pokeballs so that he could create this new species of evolver Pokemon.
Oh, and you know what's so great about that idea is what you could do with who we are in that world, giving people wings, giving people extra arms, giving
right.
I mean, you're going to be able to do some cool stuff.
Well, it's part of going. It's part of what they used to call back in the non-PC days, going native in that world, right? It's you've been there long enough to evolve in these ways, or to have to like evolve in these ways because you're there. It's like a thing.
So then the job is to escape from that as us, but also to help the other now Pokemon who maybe used to be people escape as well.
I mean, see, carrying that storyline through feels problematic because now you have Pokemon that are essentially just like Morlocks from the Time Machine, like just evolved people.
Well, I was going to say earlier that Pokemon does have a little bit of X-Men to it, in that there are like these cute ones, like the one I keep mentioning, Mewtwo, so popular. People talk about people having a Mewtwo shape. It's like they're bringing that shit into reality. They like Mewtwo so much. And so like, and Pikachu, obviously, I get that. That's kind of, I don't know. I want us to have some sort of semblance of what's the rising action and who is the villain. I don't know if they are people. Yeah, maybe they are. We go back to they're just this new genus of Pokemon, and they're being how to be trained your dragon by some warlord. But maybe that warlord is an old Pokemaster who fell into there, and maybe that was like Ash's buddy. Maybe it's Brock or something. Just pulling it out of my ass. Somebody that fell into the thing, got corrupted and weird, started merging with these weird dudes and using them to XYZ and these new Pokemon tournaments and steal people's Pokemon and ruin the game for everybody in this universe. That's a weird guy to fight. That's a fight.
A Brock going evil, and then Ash having to not only save Pikachu, but also save the friend, and you all as part of the thing have to help Brock and Pokemon and Pikachu both get saved while collecting these new Pokemon. I mean, that's a great idea. Brock going evil and then having an arc to have to come back from being evil and realize the mistake at the end of it?
I mean, I feel that. I feel the connection of that. I wonder if it's a little bit too much. And just hear me out. The only reason I say that is because we're essentially at this point talking about making a musical, right? Like it's this immersive theater experience where instead of musical numbers, we're having Pokemon fights. So if you just think about the structure of a musical, even something like Book of Mormon, which I feel like might be the weirdest but most appropriate comparison here, the actual plot and story mechanics are so simple because they have to be, because the majority of your runtime is associated to the set pieces. There is character development, but I feel like we should limit the characters and we should keep it simple. And I think if we're already going to have Ash in there as a not leading man, we should have a boy and a girl main character and a villain, and however we're going to use Ash. And that's maybe
The 4
it.
characters.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe like 2 other antagonists show up who are fighting with Pokemon in a weird way, just as a lead up to our big bad. But remember too, a lot of the mechanics are going to be searching and jumping through the different Pokeballs and encountering the new environments. And so, there's already a lot going on, I guess is what I'm saying.
Okay, so so if we're gonna how do you guys feel? I can feel like that's a solid way to do it. So then who is going to be the main antagonist?
I'm actually not ready to 100% throw away Evil Brock.
Okay, that's fine.
Only because I do think if this is like, if we're bringing Ash in, right, like there is something to say about the finality of it and having that emotional impact. I'm going to assume that at least 60 to 70% of the audience that shows up will know exactly who Brock is, and a lot of that relationship is implied within their history. The only thing I will say about that is, though, then you kind of have to have Misty in there, and it's a little bit of like if you give a mouse a cookie, where it's like, well, if you have Misty in there, then Team Rockets should probably show up, and then we start to get into the nitty gritty. But I do like the idea of the villain having some sort of connection to Ash, and that we could just invent a connection just to keep it simple, and it doesn't have to be a character.
Well, wasn't there a character called Go or something? Goh. I never watched the show, but I was reading some stuff. Wasn't there a character called Go that, like, toward the end of Ash, like one of the last times he retired and then came out of retirement to walk the earth and get more Pokemon, he was hanging out with Go, and they had some adventure, and then they broke apart, and Ash went back with Brock and Misty or something, and then they broke up and went somewhere else.
Ash had a bunch of different sort of traveling companions. He's a little bit like the Doctor in that way. Like he's constantly cycling through different companions, which I feel like is more of an argument to, like, let's come up with something specific to this story. I don't, that's my opinion. I could be overruled, but I also feel like, how are we going to pace out our reveal? Like, I'm just picturing the story starts, Pikachu is gone. So our 2 young protagonists and their Pokemon, which is not a Pikachu, which is maybe invented for the show as well, they have a cute little sidekick Pokemon that's with them. They've gone into that Pokemon's Pokeball as a way to look for the missing Pikachu, right? So at what point does Ash come into the story? And then if we're going to have other cameos, it's just like, how do you keep... Because we're going to find
Pokeball
Pikachu.
Are we going into? Are we going into Pikachu's Pokeball to start looking there?
Maybe it is Pikachu's Pokeball. I just figured
that makes the most sense, right?
Yeah. Our main characters, though, I think would have like their primary Pokemon with them, because my feeling is like that's always like every trainer has a Pokemon that's like their right-hand Pokemon.
Right.
Yeah. So I just think that would be part of
it. We're just assuming all 4 of them the two boy girl, their two Pokemons somehow are getting in the. I don't even know if we have to stop and explain it that much. They get in and we start.
No, well, that to me though, that's an argument for why either Ash or Professor Oak could just be like a disembodied voice that we just hear as if on headsets. That's essentially trying to like walk them through what they need to do.
Got it.
And then what could be cool about that is like at some point, Ash, if it's Ash, gets so frustrated with them like disobeying his orders, for lack of a better way to put it, he comes into the Pokeball. So it's like you've been hearing Ash, and then at the end of Act 1, before we go to an intermission, oh my God, now Ash is in the story with us, and everybody cheers and claps because we got Ash in live action. Wow. Only to find out that like his way of doing things isn't how they should be doing things, to use Ed's story point from earlier. And so like part of Act 2 becomes Ash being like, you know what, you guys got this. This is something that I don't know how to deal with. If we don't do that, which I'm totally fine with, I just want us to continue to think about like, all right, what are the pace of these reveals?
Yeah, now I'm walking back what I said earlier, and now I kind of like the idea of like it's Professor Oak, and he's like, Pikachu went missing, Ash went to look for him, can't contact him, because I think that reveal of, oh my God, it's Ash, doesn't work if we've been hearing him for 25 minutes.
Totally fair.
I think it has to be like, who's this guy? And then he's like, my name is Ash Ketchum, and then people do the erupt,
I like that. I like that.
You know what's really cool? Sorry, go ahead.
I mean, the two new kids who are going to be our protagonists that we go along with, or maybe even we are. I don't know how we're doing that, but either way, they could just be the best, the newest, best up and coming, like hot shots at Pokemon right now. Maybe
I would assume like maybe one of them. Like if we're using the Ash Misty kind of trope relationship, one of them just won, and like you said, like that's why they were asked to come find this legendary Pikachu, is because they are the best right now. I don't know.
You could even make it that they're the number 1 and number 2 ranked Pokemasters, and so that gives a nice little enemies to friends storyline for the two.
Yes.
I like that a lot, actually.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's a nice, simple kids
competition.
Kids can get down with that. Because honestly, that early on, then you could have their arguments escalate into a Poke battle between the two of them. Then, they settle their differences. They go deeper, they're into Matryoshka Pokeballs. And then it's like they start to encounter other people, because we need to set it up so it's like Ash is not here, but we need to throw some red herrings then, so we aren't just waiting the whole time. Oh my God, they're going to discover Ash. It's almost like you want them to encounter other people, and it's they've never heard of Ash, but it's part of the broader conspiracy of, again, I don't know that it's like bringing humans into the Pokeball to evolve them.
Is it something to like just spitballing here?
Go.
If you get into a battle with somebody who has brought these Pokemon somehow, just spitballing here, they have these Pokemon. Somebody shows up to a battle with these weird super evolved Pokemon. Nobody's ever battled them before. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. And they start doing X. Is there something to that in regards to it having an impact on the battle jazz? And then I was just thinking, like, if that happens and they do like jack people and steal people into their ball, then you on an expedition to go in there, it's like a military thing for these kids. You know what I'm saying? It's like, okay, you and me, number 1 and number 2, I'm going to go into that ball. I have a tournament next week. I think Ash is in the ball, or I think some clue to us finding Pikachu's ball is in there. So I'm going to go in there. You're going to get all weird and it messed up. You can't. Well, then you better come with me.
You know what? I think it's like an urban legend, and not everyone believes that that's why humans don't go in Pokeballs. It's like an old wives' tale. Like if you go in there, you could start evolving. Like, no, that's just shit your mom says, so you don't get trapped in there. You know what I mean?
Your face is
You
gonna
know?
stick that way in the Pokeball.
Yeah.
Why not?
Which
I mean, why not
believed
both?
till I was in my teens. Anyways, go ahead.
What if so just think about the idea that sort of whatever this horde is, this brand new type of Pokemon, they're only confined to the Pokemon dimension, but they can like move freely through the Pokemon dimension, whereas every other character is just living like an ordinary person. So it's like, what if they can, from inside the Pokeballs, trigger the Pokeballs to absorb the top trainers? So it's like all the top trainers in the world have gone missing. We have reason to believe that they've been sucked into, malfunctioning Pokeballs. But once we get in there, we realize they're not malfunctioning. There's something from this side that's sucking people in. And it's like, as we follow that mystery, we realize there's an entirely new type of Pokemon, and they're all being controlled by like a dark Pokemaster, right? And it's all happening from inside the world of the Pokeballs. And so, I mean, at that point, it's really just a question of like, who is the dark Pokemaster? Because Ash could be in there from having been sucked in. So it's almost like the Pokemasters disappear. Nobody knows what happened to them. And then when we try to open their Pokeballs, the Pokemon aren't there either. So like, what's happening? Why are all the world masters and their Pokemon disappearing? And it's taking place.
So wait, then why are they taking the Pokemon if he's trying to evolve humans? Like, why is Pikachu missing?
I don't know. I feel like maybe there's two things happening. I think maybe, to use Ed's point earlier, maybe it was your point, Billy, maybe it's not that they're evolving humans, but maybe something about humans allows them, there's like a MacGuffin in a trainer that allows them to take over a Pokemon in the Pokeball.
Well, I have an idea. So Ash has to defeat Leon to become the master. What if our dark Pokemaster is just Leon? He's bitter about having finally lost to Ash, and is like enters this other dimension and everybody told him don't ever go into a Pokeball, and then he enters the Pokeball, gets into that different dimension, and finds all of these super powerful Pokemons that he wants to control. And then as more as other beings or whatever enter the realm, he's able to create these even more powerful.
I actually really like that, because you mentioned something earlier about how like sometimes the Poke gods would come down and talk to these people, and it's like, I was chosen, like it was me. And then this kid came, and no one gave a shit anymore. No one, like, I didn't matter anymore, and it's all,
the Salieri of Pokemon. I like.
I mean, what if it is just as simple as like the people are disappearing because he wants revenge against all other Pokemasters, and the Pokemon are just.
What if this is all a setup just to get the new kids in? They think they're on a mission to do everything. It's like, dum-dums, I set this whole thing up. That's how I got all you other fuckers in here,
That's it. So if it's not Professor Oak, but it's Professor Maple, we just make up a new professor, and you treat that the disembodied voice through the whole thing is essentially like Obi-Wan. It's treated as like, oh, this is the person guiding us on this adventure. Third act reveal, I've been setting you up or midpoint reveal, I've been setting you up the whole time.
And it's Leo.
That's actually a great
and he's
one
going to
too.
turn that, if we keep the human thing, he's like, yeah, I'm training all the best trainers because you'll make the best Pokemons that I will control. I will control you.
Right. And again, I think, just going back to the game mechanic, if you had this thing this mutation that's happening to you because you're inside the Pokeballs, but you could do some kind of game mechanic to like take control of it, like it, be like, yeah, I'm the best. I turn it into a weird thing that I like, instead of I turn it into some weird White Walker of Pokemon. It's
or
like,
if we don't want it to be the humans themselves because
It's a Pokemon.
But it's like, what if there's just something inside of them? Like the reason they're great trainers because they have XYZ thing inside of them. He's like, I can harvest this thing out of these people,
an energy
to
or whatever,
create-
and it
so that way that the Pokemon are a separate thing, and it's not like we're going to trap a bunch of humans, you know?
Okay.
Mm.
Well, so I maybe this is it then. There is a Poke God, like a dark Poke God, who was trapped in the ball within the ball within the ball. And once they got freed, their power is to suck that thing out of humans to corrupt other Pokemon.
and Leon
Right.
is
And so well, I forgot about Leon. I'm just thinking evil professor trapping people in the Pokeballs. It feels like one too many hats on those hats. Just because the mechanics of it are like, all right, there was something locked deep inside the Poke dimension that once we freed allowed us to kidnap Pokemon in the Poke dimension. Then we start sucking humans into the Poke dimension, or maybe we don't. Then the Pokemon that we kidnap from in the Poke dimension get turned into this new form of Pokemon, right? So, to me, I don't know. The cleanest thing is maybe to not have the professor turn heel because it's just, well, I don't. I guess you.
Is it a rescue mission for the popular Pokemon? In these, somebody has control these days of Pikachu and all the good ones, and they get stolen. These kids are tasked with going to, like, they're the best now, and they decide to go try to do something to get them back. But as we've stated, it's really perilous. They could fall prey to the same stuff that snatched the trainers, but they're the best, and they're gonna defeat this stuff that even the old masters couldn't defeat. Is it that simple?
I mean, yes, I think so. But there's still the question of like, what is it that they're facing? What do they meet in the Pokeball?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. What's the mechanic of, like, how do we judge progress? How do we judge that you are becoming the best?
I mean,
there?
that's not. I don't know that that's necessarily what I'm. Well, I don't know if
I'm saying if
confused.
it's Pokemon, there's some aspect of it of somebody trying to be the best, and it isn't just the dark guy. It has to be the good guys too, because it's about being the best. It's in the song. There's got to be some mechanic in there of like, okay, if I'm in this situation, how can I try to be the best? That's all I'm saying.
Go ahead, Ron.
okay. I'm a little confused because what I thought was happening was that sure Pikachu went missing, but then what we did was Pikachu. Well, like eventually we learned that Pikachu went missing because what the guy inside, whether that be Leon or your dark god of Pokemon or whatever, wanted Ash to get there because Ash was the best, and he wanted to create a new Pokemon from the essence of that character, of Ash. Well, what if Ash was the best, but now there's these new up and comers, and he wants even more powerful ones, and then that's why he wants the other two to come in. They're the up and coming best ones, and he wants their essence to create the most powerful Pokemon, maybe even combine them into the most powerful Pokemon, and that's why he lures them into this dimension hopping scenario in order to get their essence, and then at the end, we all have to help the two best Pokemon trainers because they can't do it alone. They've got to win together. I don't know, as a team. Is that? I thought that's kind of, at least the beginning part was how we're doing it, and then I added the last stuff.
I mean, that's essentially it. I guess I'm having problems with number one, the mechanics of a human entering a Pokeball feel like it should be extraordinary. And so the idea that anybody would just like that you could plan that somebody from the outside is going to trap themselves in a Pokeball seems weird. right? Like,
So
oh,
you
my
think that
master
they need
plan
to
was but it's as simple as this. The feeling that my master plan this whole time was for you to come inside the Pokeball feels weird. I don't know that makes sense. And then number
so they
two,
would have to suck them out.
no.
These balls
think
and
you're-
sucking. It's so funny.
I don't. What I'm saying is, as a
And
motivation,
Bill's making me hungry because he keeps calling it poke, and I'm just like, "Shit, that sounds
I need
really
me some
By the way,
sushi that was dropped on the floor.
that is the correct pronunciation from what I understand. It's poke with the
Okay.
I
long
know.
A.
I'm fat. I'm hungry. Give me a break. No, I hear you, Bill. I understand, and part of me also is just like trying to remove. I think you said at the very beginning of all this, it's like there's a lot of things that are not necessarily kind of Western thinking about Pokemon because anime doesn't follow the same tropes and they have their own kind of set. And I'm just like, I almost feel like a dark god of Pokemon kind of fits that form of storytelling more than us trying to westernize it a little bit more with like, but really it was this guy we've known all along and heel turns. It's like, no, probably the most natural choice would be some crazy, angry deity, a supernatural being of Pokemon being in there. And it makes it simpler because ultimately, like, this is kind of aimed at kids, right? So the story should
Okay.
be relatively simple, you know?
And that was just my thinking is like 1,000 years ago, a corrupted Pokemon evolved and it was locked inside an unbreakable Pokeball. And it's been in there ever since. But it got out. And now it's free in the Pokemon dimension. And it's kidnapping Pokemon to turn them to its dark designs. We don't know that. All we know is that our Pokeballs are showing up, our Pokeballs are showing up empty. They don't have delicious tuna in them, right? So from the outside world, we're just like, what's happening to our Pokemon? They're missing.
Right.
They're not where they're supposed to be. They're not
Okay.
where I left them. And so we investigate, and the last thing that we could possibly do is do the thing that our mothers always warned us against, is shrink ourselves down and enter the Pokeball. But the idea being that like this is our last resort. So when the story starts, our two characters, you know, the two ones, maybe they're the last two remaining champions whose Pokemon haven't been snatched, right? So they're the only ones who can go into the Poke Dimension and have their Pokemon with them. Enter the Poke Dimension and are like, where are all the Pokemon? And that is the story. And at some point,
agree, yeah.
you know what I mean? And so at some point, we can encounter Ash, who maybe elsewhere on his journeys throughout the world got sucked in by the dark Pokemon. But I don't know that there's room for it to get more complicated than that. Right?
No, I think you're right.
I 100% agree. And I do think it's like, you know, we talk about like stakes and Pokemon, it's kind of strange, but it's just like, yeah, what if there haven't been tournaments for months because like all the Pokemon are disappearing? So when we start our story, it is like the end of the road in terms of like, if we don't figure this out, like, yeah, we're the only ones left that can.
Oh, bro, and
Like
also
the end of the NFL.
I would almost say like they're not even the best at this point, because I think if we're going to use these characters going forward, this is their beginning. I think they're here because they're the only ones that, like to Bill's point, that have Pokemon left, and they maybe are kind of almost shitty at it, and we're watching their origin as opposed to we skipped all of their backstory and are just starting when they're awesome, which I get it now, Ed. I feel like you've been saying that for a minute.
Yeah, but I mean, we got to come to it organically, and that's good. That's exactly right. I'm serious. I'm not trying to blow myself. I'm just saying like that's right. So that's their way of striving to be the very best.
Yes,
I like
just
that.
save the whole endeavor, you know.
I like
that's
that a lot.
when we find out, that
And
all this is the muck.
And it's interesting too, because if they're the only ones who still have Pokemon in the Pokeballs, so literally first scene, first act, they arrive. We're now inside the Pokeball, and they could drop their balls. They drop their balls, and
Pokeballs.
and
Pokeballs.
their monsters appear, and now they're just walking around. But you've already established the mechanic, like, oh, if I open a Pokeball inside the Pokeball, it still summons my monster. So this idea of like nested Pokeballs has been planted from the first scene. And if then that becomes a plot mechanic that we need to keep finding these hidden Pokeballs that have been like, that's how the demon has been kept caged.
Oh, and dude, I just think throwing this in here right now, what if, as far as the Dark God stuff, what if Ash had gone in there and he reliably knows that this guy has Pikachu in the ball's inside the ball. And Ash has been trying to get it for like years. And maybe time works different in there. I'm not trying to get too weird.
Oh, no. Let me jump on that. What if when we find Ash, he and Pikachu are in there together? Pikachu's not even captured, but they've just been battling this dark Pokemaster and his mutated Pokemon for a year. Like, we come upon them, and it's Ash and adult Ash and Prime Pikachu going to town against this guy and not winning. And so, boom, right away, you've already set up our new characters. So when the two of them team up, maybe with Ash and Pikachu, to go against the Dark Pokemaster, what a put over for them. Because like Ash has been doing it on his own for so long, and he can't do it.
Yeah.
And just the yes and that, he has to spread the love. He has been trying to be the singular best. That's the flaw of this Jedi ethos of this stuff. I try to be the singular best, but if me and the boys are the best, then we can defeat stuff that even I, as the best, cannot defeat. That's the secret.
Yeah. That's a great mechanic too for some exposition, where it's like we encounter Ash and Pikachu, and there's a battle, and we save them, drag them away to safety. We catch our first glimpse of the Dark Pokemaster, and then Ash can be like, how long have I been in here? And that's when they can really give the download. Oh man, like there's no more Poke tournaments. The whole thing is going down. Like, Brock and Misty have been searching for you for 10 years. And he's like, 10 years? I thought I've only been in here a few weeks.
Oh, bro. Us opening on like the dregs of it's almost like 90s comics, right? Pokemon and all the tournaments and stuff was so big, like Jim Lee and them in the 90s. And then there was that fallow period where it was whack. And that's what we're in. And these guys are in the minor leagues taking bumps, in high school gymnasiums as far as their level of Pokemon-ness, because that's all that's left. The business is messed up, daddy. They done messed up the business of this pro wrestling, daddy. They done ruined it, And we're trying to bring back the Attitude Era by getting the All-Stars back and getting them out of this dimension.
Let me jump on that. We could go back to this idea that they have an evil heel turn on the outside. If the guy who sent them in is Professor Goobledygop, but he's actually that guy who the anti-Vince McMahon guy. I only watched the Vince McMahon documentary, but the guy who started UCW, was it? Whatever the
Eric Bischoff from WCW.
Yeah. So the idea being that he's the disembodied voice in their earbuds the whole time, trying to guide them through the mystery. And then when they finally find Ash and the Dark Pokemaster, his heel turn is like, I just wanted you to find the Dark Pokemaster so we could free him, because he's going to work for me. And you guys and Ash are staying trapped wherever he's going to trap you, because I'm about to start a whole new generation of Poke battles. And it's going to be with all these corrupted evil ones, and nobody's ever going to beat my guy because he's a dark god from 1,000 years. He's the Sauron of Pokemon. You know what I mean? So there is still that idea of like your mentor has turned on you. So now it's like the two kids only have Ash to rely on, and Ash has to rely on the two kids. And it's only that triumvirate that can defeat them inside the Pokeball and get out to stop whatever the professor releases into the world. And that's your story moving forward.
I was going to say, I think I
And
think
free
that's
all
a
the other
better
Pokemon.
call. That's a better call than giving him an ending. Is you Batman Beyond it, right? Where
Yeah.
he's not the main guy anymore, but he's with them on the adventure. You know?
Yeah. So
Cool.
yeah, so essentially they need to follow clues into the nesting Pokeballs. They encounter Ash and Pikachu in an uproarious moment for the entire crowd. They help Ash escape. He's been battling for who knows how long. We find out in the real world, all the Pokemon are disappearing. All the Pokemasters are giving up. The whole league is crumbling. Ash is like, this guy, whoever this guy is, he has the Pokemon. We need to free them. It'll bring it back. And then they're double crossed by the voice in their ear somehow because he's working with the Dark Master to trap all the Pokemon and free all the dark Pokemon. And so they got to find a way to, sabotage the plan and race back to the outside world before the Dark Master can make it. Like that feels like more than enough juice.
I don't. I mean, maybe this is too much, but just like I do like the idea of somehow putting some sort of time limit. If we can't get back,
Oh,
you
okay.
know,
Yeah, we'll be trapped here forever. I mean, it's
or
it's a
something,
classic
I
for a
don't know.
reason. It's a classic for a
Right,
reason.
right.
Yeah.
But putting some sort of kind of like a expiration date on that, I think
I mean,
it just helps.
It could still be the human de-evolution thing. That could be our ticking clock, because I'm also picturing, Ed, you mentioned earlier, like somebody grows wings. There's a great, immersive reality gag where you rig up maybe it's Ash because he's been in there the longest. You rig him up against the screen with a harness that will lift him up and then give him big digitized wings behind him. And he goes flying up the wall of the sphere with these digital wings flapping because he's devolved.
And just to and that, this whole concept, this whole time, and obviously at some point in this giant continuity, they've probably done something like this, but this concept that like you aren't just throwing these animals and they get to be superheroes, is like you're becoming this. And it's like this, I don't know, weird mutation curse thing or something. But like for the first time, the trainer or the human gets to be a weird monster too.
I actually think that's awesome for the next cartoon series that comes after this show, which is like, we've never seen, to my knowledge, a trainer that themselves is also a Pokemon. It's like, imagine if he has the powers and like is mentoring them, but he's half Pokemon now,
That's why that is the handoff moment at the very end of this thing. Ash is too mutated to go back to the real world. He has to stay in the Pokeball. And so now it's like him and Pikachu can live together in the Pokeball because they're best friends. But he essentially becomes like, the only way they can summon him for his guidance or whatever is to release him from the Pokeball because he's turning into a Pokemon.
And then in the series finale of the cartoon, he fights, someone throws the ball, he comes out and all
dude, and you getting the Ash card, like you're Ash now, and Ash is this monster thing. Get out of here.
Millions of dollars.
That's $1 million card. They got to print like 2 of those, and it immediately becomes $1 million collectible.
Yep.
Holy crap, guys. Well, I'm going to call up Zaslav before I say that we achieved reboot here.
Oh, yeah.
So let's just see what he says.
Hello?
Hi, it's the development team calling you back. How are you?
Calling me back, huh? You're calling me back? Here's my question for you. Do you want to work in the mailroom of Warner Brothers Studios or the new Warner Brothers cable networks? Because I've got 2 different mailrooms I could send you assholes to.
Look, I think because I was the one who hung up on you. I think you're going to like what we have. We just didn't want to stop our juices from flowing.
Stop your juices from flowing? I'll cut you off like an Orange Julius after 1973. Your juices are never more important than my phone calls.
All right. Hear us out.
We're so
because
sorry.
we think we've achieved reboot. So what we have to pitch you is essentially a whole new, it's a live theatrical experience inside the Sphere in Las Vegas with the concept of you are entering a Pokeball. It's the first time in the history of the franchise that we are seeing inside of a Pokeball, and we're doing it in immersive reality. And the whole idea is that Pokemon have been disappearing from their Pokeballs. The entire tournament of Pokemon fighting is collapsing, and so two of the only kids who still have Pokemon in their Pokeballs have entered the world of the Pokeball. And they are live action actors within the volume of the Sphere. And what they have to do is find out what's happening to the Pokemon. We get to see where the Pokemon live, but better than that, we realize that there are Pokeballs inside Pokeballs, nested dimensions to hold Pokemon. And so now we're going through all kinds of worlds changing around us in the Sphere, right? Big reveal. Who's down at the bottom level? It's Ash and Pikachu. We get to see Ash and Pikachu in all their glory fighting a dark Pokemaster, a corrupted Pokemaster or a corrupted Pokemon god who has been trapped in the lowest level of the dimensions for generations. And he has gotten out, and he's kidnapping Pokemons from inside their Pokeballs and turning them into a dark army. So now we need to, with Ash and Pikachu, need to find a way to re-trap him in the Pokeball. But twist, our mentor character, the one who sent us down to investigate this mystery, has been in on it the whole time. All he really wanted was for us and Ash to get trapped deep in the bowels of the Poke Dimension so he could free the Dark Pokemaster, release the Dark Pokemon, and start a whole new Poke Fighting League. Here's the even better part. Two things. Number one, Ash turns into a Pokemon. Number two, at the end, the Dark Pokemaster is defeated by us, Ash, Pikachu, and our Pokemon, but all the Dark Pokemon escape. So AR experience, you take your Pokemon Go app, you snap whatever pictures you can, now you've got a whole new breed of Evolver Pokemon in your app. And finally, Ash has to live with Pikachu in the Pokeball as our two new heroes escape back to the human world to bring justice to their evil mentor and reignite the Poke Fighting Championships. Come on! You gotta love it!
Fourth quadrant. People are going to bring their whole family to Vegas to do this. So you're going to make money in a bazillion different ways. Through
grandmas, kids,
hotels, kids,
felons,
all of it.
Gamblers.
Plus gambling outside of it, not inside of the Pokemon, obviously.
Dude, the book being like, okay, I bet that this time we get 2 this ones and 2 that ones. I'm gonna parlay that with this and that and the other. You know what I'm saying? Because these are randomized. If we have these random people, you can bet on it. Another income stream, baby.
Frankly, I don't know what the hell you guys are talking about. We are going to make a TV series for HBO Max starring Justice Smith, star of Detective Pikachu. What the hell are you pitching me right now?
Something better than that?
Multiple income streams. A future.
We could make Justice Smith be the Dark Pokegod.
I think that's on the nose, Ron. But he's also a magician in the dungeons. Zaslav, you're killing me.
You know what multiple income streams sounds like to me? Multiple tax liabilities, you idiots! All right, we'll talk about this later. I can't believe frickin' Sphere in Las Vegas. You gotta be kidding me.
Well, despite his lack of enthusiasm, I still think we achieved reboot.
I would say we achieved it like 3 times over, 4 times over, maybe. We rebooted in the spirit of Pokemon. We rebooted a movie, a show, a card game. We rebooted the whole franchise.
Are we gonna get fired?
We gotta just take this. Even if we do, we're taking this pitch directly to TCP or whatever the Pokemon company, TPC. We're taking it directly to them because this is too good.
TCP, TPC, TCBY,
ICP.
they're all getting our pitch.
The Juggalos will love this.
They will.
Well, on that note, hopefully you at home are a Juggalo and you love this. We'll be back next time with another reboot. Meanwhile, we're going to go make $1 billion with the Pokemon Company. I am producer Bill for the Reboot Crew. We have Billy Business, Ron Swallow, Ed Greer, and we will see you next reboot.
Subscribe, baby. Subscribe.
Like.